I like the Noisia flag in the back, man. That's nice.
Oh yeah, they're a huge inspiration to me.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. I mean, they're one of those ones I feel like they've been such a big inspiration to so many people. And they, to this day, like you can kind of see, like you can see obviously the people they've inspired. And, you know, there's like a younger generation of people that, you know, they've even like worked with and put out on their label. Like, you know, they've birthed a whole bunch of people kind of in that same tradition. But even with all of that, still kind of nobody's touching them, you know?
Yeah. most definitely. I can 100% agree with that.
It's like, what is it about them? What did they do differently? I don't know. I always wonder for people who like really kind of just define a style or a sound, like, and that nobody else can touch. It's like, I don't know. I can't tell you what they're doing differently.
Yeah. I feel like it's just because maybe because they've just been there since the beginning of it. I mean,
yeah,
they are pretty much the definers of that sound, especially neuro specific.
Yeah, so that's true. So wait, when did you move to Denver? Is this like your first winter in Denver?
I actually moved here towards the beginning of the year. Like sometime, me and my girlfriend moved from. Well, we went from Seattle because that's where I'm from, Seattle. And then we temporarily moved to Spokane, Washington, where her mom lives.
Okay.
While I was going on tour with Dirt Monkey. And then I came back home like January for good. And then we were actually supposed to move to Los Angeles at first, right. Because a lot of our friends are out there. I actually like love being by the beach and like by water, but it was really hard to find like a place that we really could settle on. So we were starting to look at other cities. And then my girlfriend's a skier.
Oh,
she
yeah.
loves. Yeah. You know,
so you're done for, yeah.
Yeah. So she's like, let's take a look at Denver. And then we found this nice little spot and we got accepted. We were just like, well, if we get accepted immediately, you know, like, let's just go to Denver instead of Los Angeles. And then we ended up doing it. And yeah, so now I'm out in Denver. So we drove here through a freaking blizzard. It was like from Spokane all the way down to Wyoming, there was a blizzard going through and it hit us while we were driving our U-Haul with our car.
Fuck, man.
You know, hitched to the back of the U-Haul. So it was quite the adventure getting here. But yeah. Wow. Definitely experienced winter here before.
Yeah, fair enough, man. I mean, Denver's a good city. Yeah. Certainly for like bass music, it's a good city. It's a pretty place to live. I don't know. I think there's a lot of pluses to it.
Most definitely. I didn't even realize how. I knew they had like a really good scene here, but I didn't realize how big it actually was until I actually experienced the city, because I've only been here one time before actually moving here.
Okay.
So just settling down here, it's opened my eyes a lot, because bass music isn't, surprisingly, I thought it was pretty strong where I came from, like in Seattle, but it's tiny compared to like here for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, Denver's had that like bass capital of the US title for a long time. And I think it's pretty well deserved. And there's a bunch of other producers out there now too, right? Like kind of from that, the up and coming generation, like Blank and Enzo and all those guys are out there too, right?
Yeah, no, I didn't even know that too. Like, it's funny because everyone's always on the road, and everybody that I know that lives here, I never see them here.
Right.
But I always see them in different states.
Yeah.
So it's, but yeah, I mean, me and G-Rex go to the same grocery store, like we're neighbors.
Nice.
And yeah, I know a ton of people like that live here that I didn't even realize lived here until I ran into them like at a festival or something, you know?
I think that's the way it goes, man. Yeah. And everyone's, I don't know, like I'm pretty bad at staying in touch with people, but I feel like just in general, like DJs are, it's just a nightmare to try to like stay in touch and hang out at home. It's just,
oh yeah,
everybody flakes out. Everybody's busy. It's a nightmare.
Yeah. I think it's cause totally like, I mean, when you're out on the road and then you get back home, I feel like most people just want to kind of stay home. Like, at least that's the way it is for me. I mean, if I have a big break, I'll go out every now and again. But usually, especially if I'm trying to like get some music done, right. When I have like 2 weeks off, I don't ever usually leave my house, let alone my studio.
Yeah, dude. Are you the kind of person, like, are you a social person or do you need your space at a certain point?
It depends. It depends. Like, usually when I'm out on the road, I'm pretty social, or if I'm at a show, but then when I hit my wall, yeah, they're like, especially if it's like a Monday, like after like, you know, after a run or whatever, I need to not, I definitely need my solitude. Like I usually don't really talk to anyone for a couple of days and just like kind of get my, you know, just kind of like keep my peace for a while before I jump back into it. I definitely, have a social battery that gets drained, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those funny things, right? Because when you're on the road, it's like DJing and playing music to people and all that. It's inherently social, but then at the same time, you're there to do a job. So at a certain point, you kind of have to like cut the fun off, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, no, it's kind of ironic too, because it's definitely a social thing. But then like if you got to catch a flight at like 4 a.m., you have to like go home, play to a different crowd, different people, you know, do the whole thing over, and then go back to the hotel. It's kind of like, it's weird because you're around a lot of people, but it's still like kind of like lonely if you're not on like a tour with another like group of people at the same time. It's really interesting, actually.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, I always say you're like a tourist in everybody else's lives, you know? So like,
yeah, that's a perfect way to
you just pop in, you kind of like talk to people, see what's going on in their lives, but you're not there long enough to actually like participate in their life. You know, you're just a visitor. So it's kind of just like, you show up, you crack some jokes, you have a drink or something, and then you got to go, and that's it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
yeah, it's really funny how that works. And funny, another funny thing about it is that I actually can't do crowds very well either.
Okay.
Like I can't. I think a while back, I got like caught in like this really massive crowd, and I just like had this like weird panic attack. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get to the back. And ever since, like, I just couldn't do crowds. But it's funny that like part of my job is to play in front of a crowd. But I feel a lot more comfortable on stage than I do like just being in the middle of so many people, which is weird.
Yeah. Well, on stage you have control, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cause in the middle of the crowd, I mean, that's a fun experience in a different way, but you don't have control at all there.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm glad. I love to watch people having fun though. It's great. So I'm forever grateful for that. And if I am watching somebody else's set, I always usually go all the way to the back or like by front of house or something and experience it from there.
Oh, you got to do that, man. Yeah. It's such a danger for DJs who tour a lot to just stay backstage the whole time. And I think if you do that over and over and over long enough, you never go back out into the actual crowd, into the venue. You kind of forget like what the point of all of it is, you know?
Yeah, totally. I agree. It's always fun to explore too.
Yeah, true. Yeah. that's like one of my favorite parts of touring is like just seeing different venues, like different spaces, the architecture, what neighborhood they're in, all of that. Like I find all that shit fascinating. And I think it actually helps if you kind of get a sense of the place and you kind of get a sense of the people in a weird sort of subconscious way. I feel like it kind of helps with your performance too.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And I've also become a food tourist.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, always trying to figure out what the good spots are in every city.
Do you have like a favorite cuisine, something you're always looking for? Or
I'm a really, really big fan of Mediterranean food. That's like my number one thing. So I know Michigan has all the good spots. Yeah, and, you know, anytime I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
You know, or New York too. Some of the best food I've ever had has been in those areas.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I love going to the bigger ones where you just know you're going to have so many options.
Yeah.
And the baseline quality is just so much higher.
Yeah. No, I've been to some cities where it's all pizza and burgers, you know, and that's kind of...
Oh, yeah, you can go the other way for sure.
But yeah.
No, that's cool, man. I mean, the crowd thing is funny, to go back to that for a second, because I read that you kind of had a background in like punk music and hardcore and that kind of thing.
Yeah. When I was younger, definitely was a completely different story.
So, I mean, would you just, if you're a kid and you're going out to a hardcore show, were you in the pit? Were you in the middle of the floor?
Yeah, I used to be in the pit a lot when I was younger, and definitely had way more energy than I do now. But yeah, nowadays it's very different. Ever since I had that weird experience where the crowd was way too packed, as it's definitely turned it off for me though.
Yeah, sometimes it's just that one experience. Sometimes that's all it takes, man. Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's like once you have that one bad experience, then your body kind of is like anticipating the next one, you know?
Yeah.
And there's like some anxiety or something there. I don't know what that
especially
is.
If it's indoors. Like I just get like really weird, like claustrophobic sometimes. It's less of a deal when it's outside, but a crowd's a crowd, though.
Do you have problems with that, like on a plane or something, like in closed spaces?
Oh, yeah, dude. Part of it, okay, the thing with the plane, though, is like I am addicted to nicotine. I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
So just being on a plane and not being able to like hit my vape or anything like that is like absolute torture. So
you ever do the patch or
I tried doing the little Zyn pouches for when I'm at the airport, and I think that's been like the Band-Aid, but I think I just got to kind of quit altogether. But it's rough. I've associated it with music production. So anytime like I'm like working on a tune or something, I'll just be like hitting my vape over and over and over again and not notice it. But when I don't have my vape around or it's dead or something, it's hard for me to like sit and concentrate and work. So so I'm definitely tied. It's definitely tied into my workflow.
That's a toughie, man. That's a toughie. I mean, it sounds like you're even seeing, you know, it's like the negative impacts getting stronger, but it's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think the bright side is that the vapes have gotten me off of smoking cigarettes from a long time ago, but it's still bad. It's definitely still bad, but I feel like it could be worse.
Have you ever have you tried quitting? Like, have you tried going cold turkey or like weaning it off?
I've tried patches. Didn't work. One time I forgot I was wearing a patch and I hit my vape, and that was not good because I got like a nicotine overdose. I feel like, and that it feels really, really awful.
What does it feel like? I can't even imagine.
If you ever slept on your arm and like it felt like it went numb and like it feels all like prickly, that's like your whole body feels like that, and you get nauseous and lightheaded.
Ooh.
And it's very uncomfortable. So I stopped doing the patch. This is way too much. I feel like the Zins, those little pouches, help a lot more. But it's like getting rid of the oral fixation is like an important thing.
Fuck. There's so many dimensions to it, man. You got to like start chewing gum or something. I don't know. That's a lot.
It's hard to get out of. It's definitely I've heard that nicotine is one of the hardest habits to quit. You never really get over it. So
well, and I mean, societally, I think drug wise, it's super hard to quit. You read that everywhere. It's very, very addictive. But then societally too, it's funny because we've come so far in some ways and then other ways not at all, where it's like now I think we all know that like smoking cigarettes kills people and that, there's like warning labels on the boxes and all that, which is, it wasn't always that way. But still to this day, like people, it's like smoking a cigarette makes you cool, Yeah. And it's always been that way and it's still that way. And I don't know, man, it's a weird societal thing. Like you still see it in like every fucking movie, every TV show. It's like,
and before then, people are smoking inside like nothing.
Oh, dude.
I can't imagine.
You used to be able to smoke on planes. Smoke cigarettes, just ripping cigarettes on planes. It's crazy.
But I mean, the smoking cigarettes is at an all-time low. Now, but the vaping has gone up definitely substantially. It's very noticeable. But I mean, nobody really knows how bad it is for you yet because I don't think anyone's lived long enough to see them.
Because it keeps killing people early.
I might be one of the first.
I mean, I think we know it's pretty bad for you, right?
Well, if it's not oxygen, it's probably not good for you.
Right.
I don't think anything other than air should be entering your lungs.
But it's all, I mean, to be fair to you and everybody else, man, I mean, it's always fucking something. Everybody's got a problem with something and we're all killing ourselves in one way or another. I think it's more kind of about just like, how can I be the healthiest, but also happiest version of myself that I can be? And whatever balance people end on for that, it's like, that's kind of a personal decision.
One thing I've noticed about being on tour as well, it's hard to stay just stay healthy and to, keep on track with like exercise or like eating right. It becomes really difficult when you're always on the road too. Especially if you're in the airport.
Oh, dude, eating at the airport, it's the worst. No options. Like the best thing you can get is like a shitty sandwich.
Overpriced too for like what? Like the shittiest sandwich for like over $10 like you wouldn't even pay for otherwise.
Such a scam, dude. Such a scam. It's so bad. I mean, is this the first period of time, like, the last year or two that you've really been hitting the road heavy?
This whole last year, I mean, me and my manager have been working on this project pretty much since the end. I want to say beginning of 2020. So, I mean, we've been doing it for a while. But I mean, of course, with the pandemic, those years don't like really, they don't feel like,
like you could be working, but it's, there's certain things that are missing. It's kind of like it's happening in a vacuum.
Yeah, exactly. But after the pandemic, like I started doing, I like hopped on the Dirt Monkey tour. That was kind of like my first experience, like last October. So I've I've been doing a ton of shows ever since. So yeah, it's my first year actually on the road. And I've learned a lot. I've learned what doesn't work for me, what works for me. Still learning how to deal with burnout too.
Yeah.
That's a big one. But yeah, this has been my first year, and it's quite an exciting experience because I've been dreaming of doing this for a long, long time. I mean, before I've been a musician pretty much like my entire life, since I was a child, but doing electronic music since like 2012 ish.
Yeah. So 10 years more or less.
Yeah. And then before this, I worked at a music venue for like a couple of years in Seattle, right before the pandemic. And I was...
What venue?
I was working at like the Moore Theater, the Neptune in Seattle, the Paramount.
Yeah, I know the Neptune. Yeah.
Yeah. I was working there pretty much. And I got to talk to a lot of artists that have been on the road and touring. And I was just like, man, I just kind of want to live that life, you know?
What were you doing for the venues?
So initially I started out like doing security. And then I got like a job backstage, at the Moore Theater. So I got to spend a lot of time with like tours backstage. Like from like when the bus arrives in the morning, all the way to when they pack up and leave. Like every day we had like another big tour come through. Got to meet a lot of my idols that way too. Like a lot of people that I respect. Got to meet Henry Rollins at the Neptune. And
oh shit, that's very
cool.
That's
the guy I've looked up to, like when I was a kid. You know, back when I was like heavy into punk music.
I don't know. I'll recommend this to you and to anyone listening because I can never mention this enough. But his audiobook for his book called "Get in the Van," which is basically his experience touring with Black Flag back in the day. If you get listening to the audiobook, I've listened to that audiobook like probably 20, 30 times. It is the best sort of encapsulation of like the madness of touring and just kind of being young and angry and clueless, but like excited. It's just like the writing in it is incredible. And then hearing him read it, man, it's like one of my favorite.
I know the book you're talking about, actually. When he was on tour, he wasn't playing a show or anything. He was talking about that book, actually. Oh, okay. He did like a whole tour about that. And he did a tour about his travels across the world. But yeah, man, he has a lot to say. And like the way he was touring too was a lot different than what we're doing.
Oh yeah.
He's sleeping on like fans' floors. They weren't making any money at all too.
Oh no. Yeah. He tells stories in the book about how they would like split a salad between 6 of them that they kind of like scammed off a restaurant, and that would be what they could eat for the day, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, man. His story is really inspiring.
Yeah, man. Well, how did you get into the hardcore scene in general? Because I don't really know Seattle, like great music scene in general, but I don't know much about like the punk scene there.
It's small. It's not a huge scene. But I got into it, I mean, just through the internet, basically. Just listening back. My sister also really got me into it. She showed me a lot of music when I was younger. There's like a little ska punk scene up in Seattle. We had this venue called El Corazon. It's a really, really, really small venue, but that's where all the punk shows came through. Yeah, and I basically just hung out there. It's always all ages when I was a kid. I mean, there wasn't a really big scene, but I was pretty much like a fan from afar a bit.
It was just something about that. Like, what about it appealed to you, I guess, is my question. Like, was there early music you heard that you loved, or was it like the community aspect of it?
It was the attitude that I liked about it. It really resonated with me, especially growing up. I was a really big rebel growing up.
What, like getting in trouble a lot?
Oh yeah, man. At school, when I was in high school, people knew me as like the guy I was always pranking all the teachers and just causing havoc at school because I was really bored. That's kind of like my what I was known for.
Right.
Yeah, but punk music, like the ska punk music, actually led me to drum and bass in a really funny way, actually, because I was starting to get more into like the ska reggae side after a little bit. I was like listening to a bunch of reggae, and then that led me to discover like, dub, and dub led me to discover like Digital Mystics and like Mala, Koki, Banga, Scream, and all of that. And I was like, it makes sense. Like, it's just like more like electronic reggae. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, totally,
like a
man.
little version. And from there, I started learning about like jungle, and holy shit, once I got into jungle, I don't think I ever looked back. That was like my favorite shit. I think my senior year of high school. And then some dude showed me Noisia. I don't even remember, because I was listening to, I don't remember what I was listening to at the moment. They're like, well, if you like this shit, you might like Noisia. And they typed it in, like the Shell Shock music video.
Okay. Absolutely
blew my mind. I think this is like 2013 when I really got into like neuro and stuff. Absolutely blew my mind. Don't know who the guy is. He walked away, never seen him again. But he changed like the entire course of my life.
Wow. That's kind of wild. I mean, it's kind of cool. You can point to like a single moment like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That was the moment, because I was already like producing. Because I think, back in the day, I tried to start like a band. I was trying to start a ska punk band. Nobody would do anything, and I couldn't find the right people.
Yeah.
Just to deal with that, it was like basically I wasn't going to get anywhere doing that. I felt like, but at the same time, I was like producing, like, making, break beats and stuff on FL Studio. And then I was like, wait, why don't I just do this? And that's how I was like, I can literally write music myself. I don't need band members. I don't need anybody.
Yeah.
Kind of like.
Well, so when you were first getting into it, like when you first discovered jungle and all that, when you're still like what, like 17, 18, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you the only one, or were there a bunch of people, friends, whatever, that were listening to it?
I did not know anybody that fucked with it like I did.
Yeah.
It was just pretty much just me being on the internet, just looking through older music. I did. I was the only person I knew for the longest time until I met Justin Hawks. I didn't know anybody who was into drum and bass besides like people online.
Right.
Or like it was always people from, I wasn't really in connected with the drum and bass scene in Seattle at all. I didn't really know anybody. And I mean, I started talking to Justin online, and he's like, man, there's like a whole bunch of us out here in America that like it. We're just not connected,
Right.
But it's cool to see it change, man. It's really cool to see it like more on the forefront, because it was very, very underground when I was like getting into it.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I was thinking about this earlier today because I'm a little older, so I remember back like a little before your time, there were all these kind of like little regional scenes for jungle drum and bass in different parts of the country.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, I think, it went through a tough time in the States of just like, kind of went back underground for a bit. All of those people, those scenes, like they stayed strong, but it just, the public attention wasn't on it. And it's interesting because now, obviously, there is like this new energy. There's a whole new generation of people interested in it, doing it, all of that. But I wonder, like, it's weird to me that the older generation and the newer generation haven't connected as much, like stateside. Because I get a sense of like people who have been trying to do drum and bass and hold it down here forever. Like there's almost like a resentment of like this new energy of being like, hey, like, what about us? You know, like it's a weird thing that I don't know what that is.
It's interesting. I don't even know how to like approach that. Like, cause you're totally right. There's a little bit of a disconnect between the younger and the newer people. I talked to Fury about this. He throws a lot of drum and bass shows here in Denver.
Yeah.
He's definitely an old head. But he's different in terms, he's not like a lot of other people. He's completely embracing the newer generation, kind of like, you know, paving the way now.
Yeah.
He has a lot of criticisms about how things went wrong here. The same type of people that we're talking about here, like, are the same kind of people that get mad about, like, if a DJ uses sync.
Oh, for sure.
You know,
yeah.
Like,
some of it is just like old head mentality of just like not evolving with the times.
This exists in all kind of like walks of like facets of life, you know, like back in my day, we didn't have this, you know, it's like, it's just noise to me, honestly. It doesn't matter. And the more they hate, like, on a lot of the younger guys doing drum and bass, like, the more it tells me that we're just probably doing something right. Because, and I'm not to throw shade or anything. It's just like, man, like, it's a new era. It's 2022, you know, like, we got to kind of, you know, start anew. You know?
Oh, and I mean, culturally, anytime young people are doing something that pisses off old people, it's probably cool and interesting. Just to put a blanket statement on it, I think pretty much always that is true.
Yeah, and I honestly don't find a lot of the older crowds. Like, it's always just one person out of like a whole group of people.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. We're not talking about like a ton of people here, but it's just the vocal
Yeah, it's
ones.
always the one guy, you know, like the one guy that has to let off a stupid comment or whatever.
Well, and some of the older, I mean, you've been embraced too by some of the older generation, right? Like I think about like Spore, Feed Me, like remixing your tunes and kind of unasked for, right?
Yeah, that was really weird, actually, because I was watching his like YouTube tutorials back when I was like learning, and I went to his show when he was touring with Deadbeats like a long time ago, and I was flipping my shit, just like absolute honor just to even watch him play, you know. And he hit me up one day after Wanna came out, and he was like, hey, I really like this tune. I did a flip of it. I hope you don't mind if I played it or whatever. I was like, bro, what? Like, of course I don't mind. And I ended up sending him the stems for the actual tune. And then after that, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to drop the stems for free for anybody to remix.
So smart.
And then we also did a competition. Smart. Yeah, man, it helped. It really, really helped. Because, I mean, this track was already gaining traction. So, I mean, just like everybody was hitting me up, like they wanted to remix it or they were doing like bootlegs of it. And I was like, well, if I drop the stems, you know, my name's going to be all over SoundCloud anyway.
Yep.
You know, it helps me. It helps other people. You know, it helped a lot of other people. Like their remixes like really broke. Like Exotics, for example, won our remix competition, and now they're doing pretty well based out of San Francisco. You know, so it's really nice to see that it didn't just help me.
Right.
But yeah.
I mean, what is that tune, like Want It, obviously, you know, went crazy. I think it put your name on another level, you know, was one of the tunes of that year that everybody was playing. What's the experience of that happening to you fairly early on in your project's life? Because I'm sure like there's obvious positives, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
you know, all of a sudden you got more eyes on you. People are playing your music, looking into who you are, wanting to work with you, blah, blah, blah. But I also have to imagine that you were not expecting that to happen.
No, I wasn't at all. Man, okay, this is an interesting story because, I mean, it was fairly early in my Kumarion project, but I've been producing for like 10
Of
years
course.
prior to that. And I was just like getting to this point to where I was like, man, I can't just keep chasing this forever. You know, I need to do something now. And if I don't, I need to just like, you know, get like an actual job,
Oh, yeah.
you know, just kind of.
Did you have like side hustles, side jobs that you were doing all along?
I was just working at the music venue.
Okay.
I was trying to put this project together in my head, you know, like I was so picky, like within the last decade about how I was going to present myself, you know, so I was waiting. I was trying to be patient about it, but it was getting too long. So I think end of 2019, I decided to officially go with Kumarion and just like, you know, make everything official.
Yep.
I dropped my first track on Play Me Records in 1984. That actually got supported by Nightmare. That was the first tune I put out.
That's a good sign.
And a bunch of DJs were playing it, and that blew my mind.
Right.
I was like, this is the first tune I put out officially on my project. And that was taking off like pretty well. And then I was sitting on Want It for a while until my roommate that I was living with, he's just like, dude, just fucking send it to a label and just release it. Stop sitting on it. Cause I was so weird about it because I didn't like it at first, actually. I was like, I need to fix it. I wasn't like happy with the mix down. I wrote that tune on like the shittiest pair of monitors, like that, you know, like some like wish.com like fucking monitors and my headphones. So I couldn't get the mix down like the way I wanted it to. Yeah, but he was just like, dude, just send, like, what else? What can you do, man? Just send it out and just see what happens. And then I did. And then Jody Dalla picked it up. And man, yeah, the rest is pretty much history. And okay, and the funniest part about all that, it was taking off.
Right.
And then literally not even 3 weeks later, the pandemic happened and everything shut down. So I was like, fuck, dude, fuck. Why? I thought the world was going to end. I was like, man, I was just doing it. I was literally on the cusp of just like kind of just like letting go of trying to pursue music professionally.
Right. Fuck.
And then I dropped that. It works out, and then everything shuts down. So that was really it. I mean, I had a lot of weird come-ups in my life, but that one was by far the weirdest come-up I've ever had.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, I wonder, do you think, were there any like silver linings in that? Because I feel like, you know, everybody started doing like live stream sets, and I know it was getting played a ton on that. Like, do you think it like maybe even extended the tune's life a little bit in the sense that everything slowed down right as it was hitting?
You know, that's a question I think about every day.
Yeah.
And it honestly gives me such a headache trying to like figure it out. Because like sometimes I'm like, well, what if it did? Like, what if nothing shut down? What if I could have rode that wave a lot harder,
right,
like at festivals and stuff? But I honestly don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, I mean, do you think this is a thing I talk about on this show a lot, is when like younger artists or just, you know, newer projects, when you have that hit out of nowhere that you weren't expecting, for some people, it can be disorienting if you're not ready to like execute on it, if it wasn't a plan, you know what I mean?
Dude, yeah, I was so unprepared. Like I had a bunch of labels hit me up and they're like, yo, like we want music from you. And I just started working with my manager and I had nothing, bro. I had nothing. I was like, yeah, we'll keep in touch. I'm gonna work on stuff. So that actually, now that you mentioned that, yeah, it might have been a blessing, because I mean, working at a music venue in Seattle, where the pandemic started in this country, we were the first. I was like the first to like lose my job.
Oh, wow.
At the end of that. Yeah. I was one of the first people because, I mean, like they were like, you can't have a crowd more than like 1,000 people or something. So that was pretty much all of our venues. So our venues decided to shut down. So I was just stuck at home. But yeah, no, it did give me a bunch of time to write some music. And Justin, my boy, that kind of introduced me to like this whole drum and bass community online. He connected me with UKF, and they really liked what I was doing and where I was going. And I sent them because one, it wasn't a drum and bass tune. That was like one of my very few one-offs that I did. But I'm starting to write more music like that now.
Yeah.
But that's besides the point. But yeah, I got connected with the UKF, and I was like, man, this is like my chance to really kind of push what I've been loving for like this last decade and what I've been advocating for. So yeah, they signed a bunch of tunes for me, and I've been working with them ever since. They've been a really big help to my project as well.
I mean, if you want to talk about like, staying current, like older generation to newer generation, like UKF, I think has done an amazing job of that because they were around kind of from the start of all of this and still to this day, like putting out bangers, supporting new artists, like they're on it.
I think like UKF is a really important bridge in between the European scene and the American scene. Yeah. Because I mean, we were all listening to UKF like back to like 2013, 2012, 2011, when all those tunes started coming out. They're a really important part of, I feel like, my story as well. That was a big, big, big goal, man. Yeah. Just like I remember listening to "I Will Never Change" by Banga on their on their page when I was younger, and I was like sitting in my room alone, and I was like, man, this is like a really, really, really good tune. I remember that moment and like just being a nobody doing nothing. Fast forward to now, seeing my tunes on the same exact like YouTube page that inspired me is just mind blowing.
So cool, man.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, at this point, like, you've worked with so many good labels, respected labels like, Deadbeats and Wakaan and all the ones we've mentioned. Are you like, where's your head at for releasing music at this point? Like, are you looking for a home? Are you going to stick to singles base for a while? What are you thinking for putting music out?
I'm currently working on an album right now. So, I really wanted like to find the next step of the Kumarion project, since I've been releasing like just like little EPs, singles all year. I just feel like I'm at that next step where I want to really, really hone in on my first freshman like album,
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. And I found like a really good home with the Deadbeats family. They've been really supportive of like all the music that I've been releasing. I've made friends with all the artists on the label. They're just really good people, and Wakaan as well. Like there's some really amazing people that work.
They crush it, yeah,
on that label. Yeah, so I feel like I found my home for sure. Yeah, they're good people. They don't. I wouldn't say they're not picky, but like they're really open,
right,
to exploring new things, Well,
I think new avenues. Yeah, I think they would agree with what I'm going to say, which is that I think they want artists to just be themselves and not to worry too much about if it fits in with anything or not.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they've given me such a amazing platform. I mean, Deadbeats has put me on so much,
Yeah, I like those guys a lot, man.
Yeah, they're great people.
Yeah, now that's cool, man. So the album is interesting. Are you approaching it differently in any way from like writing? Like, did you change the way you're writing music? Did you change the way you're thinking about like your own material?
Well, I think writing music this whole entire year, also in between playing a lot of shows, not to say that my singles don't really like feel like much, but just writing one single over and over and over again, just I feel like I'm not like fulfilling my purpose.
Yeah.
It doesn't kind of like, ever since I've decided to write an album, it's given me a lot more meaning, and purpose into like I put in a lot more thought about how I approaching, like I want to make it really cohesive, like harmonically and story wise. But as far as writing the tunes go, it's really hard to write in a linear way for the album. So what I'll do is basically just kind of like I don't like to I like to kind of go with the flow and not like kind of like assume anything when I'm writing. And if something fits, I feel like an idea fits with the album.
Right.
I'll just make a ton of tunes and then, and then just kind of like piece it together from there. That's kind of the approach that I'm taking right now.
Well, that makes sense, man. I think because the way you write already, like all of your tunes, I think there's some hallmarks that make them stand out. Obviously, like you're very good at sound design and engineering and all that. But beyond that too, like I think your choice of melodies, the scales you use, all of that is interesting. Yeah. There's like some, I don't know what you would call it, like kind of Mediterranean influence or like, cause
I take a lot of influence from, like a lot of Arabic culture that I came from.
Which is what?
I'm Moroccan.
Okay.
So that it's like North African, basically Mediterranean, like we're right on the Mediterranean Sea, based like the most outer part of it.
Right.
And everybody along the Mediterranean, Mediterranean Sea kind of like shares a little bit of their cultures. Like even in Spain, Italy, Morocco, all the way to Israel and, Egypt, like a lot of the music sounds really, really similar.
Yeah. Did you hear a lot of that music growing up?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like my mom's always playing like a lot of Arabic music. Been to a lot of Arabic weddings.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Have you gotten to go spend a bunch of time in Morocco?
I've lived there for like a year when I was younger.
Okay.
I went to school there for a little bit, but then I came back to the States.
How was that? What was that like?
It's very different, man. It's very, very, very different.
I've spent one day in Morocco, so I don't really know the deal.
Oh yeah, it's a whole different lifestyle. Although it's becoming more. America has like such a strong influence like on like culture around the world. So Morocco is a little different than a lot of the other Arab countries because, well, we don't have any oil there.
Right.
So it's a really, relatively to the rest of the Arab world, it's a very peaceful nation. We don't have much going on there. People there like to party a lot.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of rainbow gatherings that happened out there in the Sahara Desert too. So that'll tell you.
Wait, what's rainbow gathering again? I know that phrase.
It's like a little. I think it's like a bunch of deadheads. Like it's like a hippie festival thing that it's like unofficial, unorganized. They just meet up.
Right.
Like random places across the world.
That's cool, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard Jimi Hendrix has dropped acid in the Sahara Desert there.
I'd buy that. That sounds about right.
I don't know if it's true or not, but that's the story that everyone says over there.
Yeah. No, it's very cool, man. And do you think the influences in your music, is that like a conscious thing? Is that a choice you make? Or is it just kind of you heard a lot of that growing up and it's just kind of knocking around in your brain?
It's kind of both, man, honestly. Like it's anytime I like write any piece of music, it's just kind of like naturally like that Phrygian scale is kind of like what I go to just off the bat naturally. I don't always try to do that,
Yeah.
but I think it's like the easiest for me to understand just because I've been around it longest. There's not too many Arab people in this scene, I feel like. So I like to like kind of like represent it a little bit. I mean, there's a few, but there's not like, a whole ton of people.
Yeah, man. Well, what brought your folks over to the States?
My grandpa came to America. I think he moved to Vegas like a long time ago. And then my dad was born in Morocco, but then he decided a lot of my family was moving over here. So my dad came with him when he was younger.
Okay.
But yeah, my dad was born in Morocco, but he moved over here.
And then what did your folks do
my mom,
here?
I mean, we weren't like the richest family growing up, like mom worked a regular job. My dad was like a waiter at a restaurant, but my dad wanted to be he was really the artistic person in the family. Like he was a musician. He's also like a painter, and he was also an actor, like a little bit, or like tried to pursue those things.
Right.
But you know how that goes. It's tough. But it's cool to see that it's working for me.
Yeah. I mean, I have to imagine he's probably stoked about that, man, to be able to like kind of see his dreams through you a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, he passed away when I was like really young.
Oh,
so,
I'm sorry, man.
It's all good, man. Yeah, I wonder what he would say if he was around,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've talked to other people kind of in that position where it's like parents, I think, are conflicted in that way. Because of course, like, coming over from another country to America, it's like, the land of opportunity thing. And you want your kids to just be able to do whatever they want to do and to have this free life. But then also, if you see your kids kind of like trying something like a risky path, it's like, oh man, did I do all this work just for the kid to like?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, my mom she now is one of my biggest supporters. She's always supported me. Like she's helped me out with the project, like financially too.
Right.
But before, when I wasn't really, when I wasn't making any money off of it, the second she saw me start making like a living off of it, she's like, okay, yeah, he's serious about it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like that's how like foreign parents are, yeah, ever since she saw me start making money and like living off of this, she's like, yeah, no, he's serious, and he's doing what he wants and he's achieving his goals. So
yeah, man.
But before it's like, yeah, go ahead, do music as long as you go to college and get a normal job.
Yeah, dude. I mean, of course, that's the classic parent thing. But for you, like, I mean, it is cool because it's all happening at the moment. You're on tour a bunch. You're working on an album. You're kind of buzzing in the scene, all of that. But like you said, you've been producing and working at this for like a decade. It makes me wonder, like, how do you feel about where you're at right now? Like, does it feel like you're just getting started, or does it feel like you're in the middle of like a long process here?
Oh yeah, man. I'm like shooting for Mars. It feels like anytime I accomplish a goal now, it almost feels like, and not to sound ungrateful, but it feels almost like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
And like I always remind myself to stop and like smell the roses, but I am nowhere near finished and nowhere near where I want to be. So I like to stop and smell the roses, but there's plenty of more work to be done. I'm not satisfied.
Do you see yourself as part of because I think, you know, people love to sort of assign narratives to things and to group things together. And we talked earlier about like there's this kind of renewed energy for drum and bass in the States right now. Do you see yourself as like part of that movement? Is that sort of something that you consider like part of what you're doing? Or is it just kind of like right place, right time thing?
I've been kind of like battling. I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot recently. And I mean, I've been such a big proponent about it online. I don't want to pigeonhole myself into just doing drum and bass because there's plenty of other music that I love too.
Right.
But drum and bass has been like the biggest influence on my life, I would say, as far as chasing this dream goes. As far as the American movement goes, I just want to be a part of like, you know, the book that said I helped push it. I helped kick open the door. I'm not necessarily looking for any sort of title or anything like that, you know?
Yeah.
I just want to see it happen. I don't care who's leading the way. I just want to be able to go to a fucking a drum and bass massive here and not have to fly to Europe.
Right.
That's all I'm looking for, man. Like, honestly, whether I play it or not, you know, I'm just happy to see people enjoying it the way I do because, you know, just like watching those Noisia Rampage sets. And I'm like, dude, we don't know what we're missing out on out here, you know?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, it's true, man.
People are so quick to judge here, like, oh, I don't like drum and bass. It's like you've barely scratched the surface because the genre goes so deep. It's so deep.
Oh yeah.
You know, I don't want to be that guy that says, oh, you haven't found the right strain yet. You know, but
it's kind of true though. I did a podcast a couple days ago with the Glitch Mob, and they all came from jungle and drum and bass when they started, and we were talking about how LTJ Bookham got them into a lot of drum and bass. You know, he's like, I mean, listening to that dude play a set, it's like listening to a jazz record almost. You know? Yeah,
exactly, man. Like it's crazy how like your regular, like, you know, electronic music consumer here in America, you know, it's really new to them, but all of your favorite artists here, all of the people that work in the music industry from top to bottom, you know, like in the as far as electronic music goes, a lot of them came from jungle and drum and bass. A lot of them did. You know, you talk to literally anybody, like I was saying, like we were talking about earlier, the Noisia Flag, man. Right. They were a big influence to just bass music in America. You know, just their sound design, the way they write. Like I have right by my kitchen, I have the Outer Edges album framed, you know, and I walk by it all the time just because it's like, you know, to me, that was the perfect album.
Have you ever met those dudes? You ever talked to them?
I've talked to Tice. Yeah, I've talked to Tice before. We played a show together in Los Angeles, and I was right before him, and that was fucking fun. Yeah, no, I've talked to him on Instagram before. Yeah, I love his takes on things and the way his outlooks.
Yeah. No, he's a super, super interesting dude. Do you know the Glitch Mob guys at all? Did you ever meet them?
I've never met them, but I've loved their music. Yeah, but I've never met them before.
Have you heard the new album? I think it actually comes out tomorrow, but they like released a few singles.
No, I haven't. I haven't.
Dude, I'll send it to you after this. It's all drum and bass. It's crazy.
What? It's
dude,
like, I need to hear.
Back to the roots. Like I just spent an hour talking to them about how they're basically like going back to their jungle roots, and yeah, it's fucking good, man. It's a fun album.
Yeah, man. I would love to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. I'll send it to you after this. Just because I was talking to him, it made me think of it.
Awesome, dude. Awesome.
Well, what else? I wanted to ask you back to when you were working at music venues for a second. Did that teach you anything about the music business, about being an artist? Did you get any lessons from that job that you took with you?
Well, just being around it, it's kind of like numb me to all kind of like, it was a good thing because I don't freak out, if I see somebody that I'm a fan of, I don't, that fan mentality kind of goes away.
Yeah.
And I've learned to like speak to people like, and like, I kind of like was, watching how the tours kind of worked, and that's when I kind of learned like, oh, it's not just all fucking shits and giggles, it's tour life is really, really, difficult sometimes, it's fun though. But it can get hard especially if you're on the road a lot.
Well, and how much work goes into putting on a show, right?
All day, man. Yeah, these guys spend all day, especially if you're playing. I mean, it's easier for DJs because our soundtrack's like what, 2 seconds.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. But if you have like a whole band with you, if you got gear, the sound checks are like a lot longer. It's a lot of work.
And production too, right? I mean, it's,
yeah. Oh, production. Yeah, of course.
Like,
yeah.
How big the teams are, all that.
Yeah, man. Just to support like a 1 or 2 people, Yeah. They put in the most work, I would say.
Oh, dude, it's so crazy. I don't know if your average fan, especially for like dance music in the era of like production arms race where everyone has these crazy stages and all that. I don't think people realize how much work goes into just making it so the DJ can walk on stage and look cool for the show,
Yeah.
Like it's so much. Yeah. Like to me, there's almost a romantic part of it because it's like, it's fucking people working with their hands. It's like craftsmen building things. It's kind of awesome when you see behind the curtain that way.
Yeah, and the massive amount of money that gets put into it too. Man, it's not cheap. Like a lot of people like to assume that, you're playing on a stage, you must have money, or like you must be like that well off for yourself. But the fact is I've come to learn, especially talking to a lot of people, like usually a lot more, the more money you make, the more money you put in your project, and the more, those video walls and those LED panels don't just come out of thin air,
Yeah.
That bus doesn't pay for itself.
Oh man. I mean, I know, I would say usually when I see somebody doing like their first bus tour, when like people just get to the level where they can do something like a bus tour, like best case scenario is like that tour ends and you've broke even, people, it's tough to like operate on those big levels unless you are a bona fide superstar,
Yeah, it can be for sure. I'm not to that level yet. But I've been around people who have, and I talk to people that have dealt with that.
For you, where you're at right now, are you feeling the crunch of like the rising cost of touring and all that?
Yeah. Everyone is, dude. Yeah, I live and die by the airlines, man. At this point, I would say the cost of travel has been brutal this year, man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Brutal.
It's crazy.
It's like paying $500-$600 one way tickets. When your fee's not like that high, and like you still got to wait on, getting paid sometimes from these promoters and talent buyers, or if
you get a good opportunity to open for somebody that would be a good look, but there's not much money, makes it hard. Man.
Yeah, it is really hard. But I always try to look on the bright side of it, is like the fact that I can even do this at all, just doing what I love full time, of course it's a battle, it's a struggle, but it's part of the journey, I would say, and like just being able to do what you want in life and making a career out of it, you're already in like a small percentile of people in the world that can do that,
Yep.
And just especially living in a different country where people don't have the same opportunities, like for a bit, I feel like I'm a lot more thankful because I've seen it, I wasn't always, good, like when I was, especially before working at a music venue, that was like the most stable job I ever had until that point. Yeah, I was broke. There'd be times where I couldn't eat, like, so I've seen the other end of it, man. Like,
yeah,
and it's not pretty, but that's what's also keeping me like constantly, trying to do better, trying to, I want to make this really sustainable, and I want it to mean something, which is also another reason why I'm in album mode right now.
It's smart, man. Yeah. All of that makes sense. And I think maybe the flip side of that, I ask people this question a lot, but like, what's the most fun part of it for you? What's the part that you're just like so happy to do? What's the thing that keeps you excited about where you're at right now?
I would say just there's nothing like writing a song one day on your computer alone, nobody else. And then the next day being able to step in front of thousands of people and play it and watch them all go fucking apeshit. Yeah. That's like a high that nothing, like you can't, you can't get that, anywhere else. And it's crazy just to be able to bring something from that little world that you call your imagination and to just like materialize it. And it's like, it's powerful, man.
Yeah, man, I agree.
Turned off again.
Oh yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, it's a powerful feeling, and I constantly like try to realize how much, influence and stuff like, as artists you have over people. So you try to sound, people are listening to you, like you're not being ignored anymore. It's time to tell the story, tell a story that people can sympathize with. Or I know from the other end of it all, just watching other people blow up like Immersive, or just like watching other people's stories, it got me excited, so it's cool to be able to share that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's funny you mentioned Mersive. That's the second person who randomly mentioned Mersive to me today.
Yeah, I got off the tour bus with him this last weekend, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy. It's funny because I was listening to a podcast. I think it was him and Mr. Bill. I was listening to that podcast, and he was giving like all sorts of advice, and how he made it through financially. And that inspired me, to kind of like, take charge of like my finances and stuff in order to be able to survive. And it's really weird, like full circle. Now I'm talking about it on a podcast with you.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it's really it's trippy shit.
Well, okay, so I mean, let's keep paying it forward then. Like, coming from not a lot of money, getting into this kind of work where, yeah, money's hard to come by at the start. Are there any tips or tricks or just general advice you've learned that you can pass on to somebody?
Yeah. And my mom used to always tell me this when I was in high school, and I never listened to her, but make sure you have good credit. That is like one of the biggest lessons I've learned, because like the way it works in this country is not the way it works in a lot of other countries. We like a lot of people like live and die by credit here. Yeah. If you have bad credit, you're gonna have a hard time in life. And especially like, you don't know when you're going to get paid for these shows, and being able to kind of like, pay for tickets and then kind of like, just be on top of everything. You have to have a good credit score. So start building it now, and make sure you're staying on top of it. Because it'll save your fucking life one day when you're touring. Yep. And this promoter doesn't pay you the money. All of a sudden you need to buy like a plane ticket, and you have nowhere to go,
Oh yeah. Or like your computer takes a shit one day, and you got to, all of a sudden drop $2,000, $3,000 on a new computer out of nowhere.
Exactly. Yeah. It can halt you in your tracks if you can't pay for it. So that's one thing I've been working on for like the last 2 years. You know, it takes a while.
Yeah.
But it's helped me, and I've only recently just had success with expanding my credit. But yeah, it's saved my ass, man. I was able to buy all my plane tickets, and then I just pay those off like every month as I get paid through the promoters. And it just continues to build my credit score. But yeah, like I said, if you want to run a long-term business or anything, you're gonna have to borrow money or something like that in the long run. So it's a good thing to keep like watching.
Yeah, no, it's good advice, man. And you can never start too young on that kind of thing too, you know?
No, yeah. I had really shitty credit up until the pandemic. And then I was like, I was getting unemployment and stuff because, I lost my job.
Right.
And I was like, well, this is a good time to fix my credit. And, I'm getting all this money now. So I might as well just, focus on that while I'm sitting at home writing music, and yeah, it helped a lot,
Yeah, man. I mean, at least that's another good pandemic silver lining, maybe, is like just giving you that space to do it or forcing you to do it,
Yeah, true. Very, very true. Yeah. I came out of that luckier than others, I would say. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, no, man. I mean, I think there's there's obvious drawbacks and silver linings for everybody, but as much as we can focus on the positive parts, I think that's just mentally kind of what we got to do at this point.
Yeah, most definitely, man.
Well, this has been super fun, man. I like talking to you. Is there anything else we haven't talked about yet? Anything that's on your mind or you want to get out there? New music, plans, anything?
After a year of touring, now the two things I'm facing is writing my first album and my first headline show by the end of the year.
Oh, so, you're trying to finish the album more or less by the end of the year?
I'm giving myself a soft deadline would be end of January.
Right.
Just because I got a lot of other stuff going on. But I just put a demo tape together earlier this morning. I got good 5 tunes already done for it. So I'm like almost halfway-ish, it's all been about trying to get to that next level. The last couple of months, I've been just focusing on trying to do something new, because I got the opportunity to do everything I wanted to do or everything I dreamed of, already within this last year. So it's time to conjure up some new dreams.
I love that, man. No, that's perfect for you. Obviously, like you're still even just working on your debut album, but do you have like thoughts of like really expanding musically at a certain point? Like, are there things you haven't done yet that you want to try at some point?
As far as music goes, yeah, there's tons of genres. I want to like kind of like do a little piece of everything in my album.
Yeah.
All the genres that have inspired me. Like I have a ton of, like, I think already 3 of them are already drum and bass tunes. But yeah, I wanted to touch up. I wanted to do a little bit of dubstep, some of the new, like something completely new. I'm probably going to do some halftime in there. I want to do like at least I want to try a future garage tune, but I'll have it kind of like fit like kind of like my style and like my sound design palette,
Yeah.
So it's noticeably me, but I wanted to try in different styles, like, because that's a challenge in of itself, and that can also help you define yourself. Like if you can make like a ton of different things but you can still tell it's me, then I feel like I've accomplished something.
Yeah, it's a really good goal. Really good goal.
Yeah. Whereas if I'm just, I don't want to write like one kind of like genre and just it be like generic. And it's honestly, quite frankly, as an artist, that's fucking boring too. Like just doing one thing. Yeah. That's like that's boring to me, Like I don't want to do the same shit and just over and over and over again. Cause every time I try to write something different, I just have way more fun with it because it's like exploring something completely new. you know?
Yeah, man.
Not all the techniques, the production techniques are not all the same in every genre, you know?
That's right. Yeah. You keep, I mean, that's got to be part of the fun of it for you, I would imagine, is like the challenge of it. Like you got to stay challenging yourself, right?
Yeah. You know, yeah. It's challenging. It's not boring, you know? And it's like refreshing too. Like I don't even like, I'll go through like periods of listening to certain types of music, you know? And I'm frankly right now, I'm kind of bored with like listening to a lot of bass music just because I've just been touring and playing and hearing it and seeing it a lot in general. So I've been listening to a lot of like future garage, some like lo-fi stuff, you know, and that's inspiring in hand, like just listening to it, inspiring me to write something that's similar to that. You know, it's just a vibe that I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, man. Well, it's funny because I think with Want It, that tune got so popular that I feel like so many people started making stuff that kind of sounded like it or like followed that same formula. It's like it's almost your fault that bass music got more homogenous. It's like,
dude. Okay, I've been thinking about that, but it's cool though. It's cool to see that actually inspiring people to write like. There's like a whole shit ton of music that sounds almost like it. And it's cool.
Yeah, man.
It's cool to see that. I don't know. Some people feel like all types of way about that kind of shit, but I love watching, you know, I love basically being able to light that fire and it just turn the whole fucking building up. That was cool. I'm not gonna lie.
That's great. No, that's like I'm glad you could look at it like that, man. That's the best part. It's just fun, man. Being able to cause a little chaos and make people mad. That's kind of what it's all about.
Yeah, dude, because the second I fucking wrote that tune, I was immediately over it. I was just like, I just felt like I walked out. But I've been playing it in my sets again. Like this whole year, I haven't played that song.
Really?
Maybe, I've played it like maybe a few times. Maybe like I can count on my hand how many times I've played it this year. Only because like, you know, I was focusing more on my drum and bass stuff. And I'll play like the, you know, like Feed Me's like remix, you know, like Spore's remix of it. But yeah, I'll do remixes or tease it or whatever, but I'll never actually play the original tune. Up until recently, I've been playing it a lot more because I'm like, I feel like I owe a lot to that song, you know?
Yeah. Because
it's given me a career. So I just been like looking back at it and I'm like, well, fuck it. I should just own it, you know? Just like be doing this for like a whole entire year now. Like it's made me more grateful, I would say.
Well, that's great, man. I think that's a pretty good note to wrap it up on. I'll just ask you the last question, which is the same question I ask at the end of a lot of these interviews. It's kind of just like a first thing that pops into your head kind of question. Just looking for a memory from your life, a moment from your life. It could be from any time. It could be from when you were a kid. It could be from last week. Doesn't matter. But just a memory where music really had a deep impact on you, really like meant something to you in that memory. And that could be something like gave you goosebumps or made you cry or soundtracked a happy moment. And doesn't have to be the most important one, kind of just the first one you think of.
Yeah, I already know the answer to that. It would be, I was at Base Canyon at the Gorge, I think 2019. Funny enough, I was watching Wakaan on the main stage and just being at the Gorge, it's like absolutely the coolest venue I've ever been to.
Beautiful,
hands down. Like it's beautiful. It's like, honestly, it's that watching Wakaan 2019 at the main stage, I was just like in utter shock on how it was like a back-to-back amongst all the artists, the Wakaan takeover. It like inspired me to actually write Want It. Like as soon as I got home, the next day I wrote that song in a day. And I've just been tweaking it. And then it came out. And then just to be able to go full circle and be able to play the Gorge this year
Right.
Like, that changed, that definitely, made me realize a lot of things. But yeah, I would say that.
What was it like? Do you remember that moment of like being inspired to go back or to go home and write that song? Like, what was it about that show?
I don't know, man. It was just, I was just watching those guys do their thing up on stage, and then they were just all like vibing. Like they were just lost in the music up there. And then watching everyone around me lost in the music as well.
Yeah.
I was like, that is the kind of energy that I'm looking for here. That's, just everyone in it 100%, like in the zone. It's sometimes you don't get that. And like, it's dependent on the show, but like when the crowd is in tune with the artist or the artist up on stage,
right.
It's timeless, that was one of those moments for me, I would say.
That's beautiful. And I mean, that gets into like the alchemy of writing music too, right? Because I think that's a really good goal for writing music, is not only to write something that means something to you, but to write something that people will be able to connect with, and to like take the whatever weird stuff is in your brain, whatever you're thinking about or feeling at the time, and give it to people in a form that means something to them, Yeah.
How some people say there's no such thing as good music or bad music. Like, I disagree with that in the sense of like,
I would disagree in a way, with like, that.
Yeah, but my definition of what good music is the ability to articulate accurately how like to try to portray the emotions that you're trying to portray as accurately as possible,
Yeah.
And that, because music to me is like it's a language that you learn, every chord, every note, every combination of sounds like forms like, a letter, and then the structure of the song is a sentence or like the story, and to be able to put those things together and to be able to share that with somebody else and have them feel that same way. Like, for example, like that song, The Buzz by Hermitude. That one's a really good example. I feel like the lyrics are like, do you feel it, or is it just me, or whatever? Like the lyrics fit the song.
Yeah.
And then when that buzz comes in, do you feel the buzz? And it's like, da, 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 da. You feel it. You actually feel it. That song gives me goosebumps because of that. And that's like, it doesn't have, like, you can do that in music, and yeah, that's what I'm aiming for, and like going back to the Wakaan thing, I felt it there too, and I've been trying to shoot for that ever since. So that's why sometimes writing music can be frustrating, because, you'll be writing something, and if you're not like, even though it could sound like objectively good, it feels like empty sometimes, so I'll just scrap it, even though like some other people might like it, but I just don't feel, the buzz.
Yeah. Hey, nice one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, man. I don't think we could wrap it up better than that. So let's leave it there, man. This was great. Thanks for taking the time to do it, man.
Of course, man. Likewise. I appreciate you for inviting me on.
Dude, anytime. Yeah, that's it. Have a great rest of your day, man.
All right. Likewise, my man.
Thanks, dude. Good talking to you.
All right. Peace.
All right, man. Bye.